Deion Sanders of the Republican caucus, Ted Cruz.
Essentially, the industry schools, I don't know if that's me or
That's
not.
the NFL, man.
Is it avenues and levers and pulling?
Have you apologized to those female athletes?
Who's the highest paid NIL person in college football?
Again, she's making into the seven figures.
I mean, you got the University of Utah offering everybody who will play a truck.
Thank you. I'm turning it back over to the real chairman, but I just want to say next up is the Deion Sanders of the Republican caucus, Ted Cruz.
That may be the kindest introduction I have ever gotten in my life. I will say to the senator from New Jersey, he may find that introduction played in attack ads against him in his home state. So I apologize for that ahead of time. There's a big debate over whether student athletes should be classified as employees or not. I believe that would be a very serious mistake. It would subject scholarships to taxation. It would subject student athletes to all sorts of wage and hour regulations. It would mean if suddenly you have a receiver who drops a bunch of passes, you can be fired and lose your scholarship. All of that seems really bad for college athletics, not to mention the cost that it would impose on smaller programs that I think would lead to eliminating smaller programs. Going down the panel, do you believe student athletes should be treated as employees, yes or no?
No.
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 Yes, for FBS football, Division I men and women's basketball.
No.
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 Let me ask you about a student safety issue of a different kind. Earlier this year, this committee heard testimony from a 12-time All-American swimmer, Riley Gaines. She testified that in March of 2022 at the national championships where she was swimming, she was forced to share a locker room with a biological male, Leah Thomas. Let me just read from her testimony. In addition to being forced to give up our awards, our titles, and our opportunities, the NCAA forced me and my fellow swimmers to share a locker room with Thomas. Let me be clear, we were not forewarned, we were not asked for our consent, and we, the women, did not give our consent. Is that still NCAA policy?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to defend what happened in 2022. I wasn't there. I was still governor of the Commonwealth. What I will say is we have very specific rules and standards around the safety and security of all our student athletes, and anyone who hosts one of our national championships has to accept that they know what they are and then abide by them accordingly.
But and does that include female athletes having to share locker rooms with biological males not being warned or consent? Are they asked for their consent?
I don't believe that that policy would be the policy we would use today.
Currently not in.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, let me just ask you this. Would you support the right of student athletes to unionize? Athletes like Ms. Gaines, Ms. Thomas here today, to unionize, to have some bargaining power on some kind of an equal footing to deal with the NCAA, whether it's over safety issues like this one, whether it's over name, image, and likeness, whether it's over compensation. It seems like these institutions have all of the power. The NCAA has a lot of power. As we heard from Ms. Gaines, should student athletes have the right to unionize, to be able to speak with a little bit of an equal voice?
I think the most important thing for us to remember here is to unionize. If student athletes were to unionize, and we're going to have court cases on that, which is why there's currently 2 NLRB cases that involve this issue. I'm more likely than not to not want to speak specifically to those. I do have concerns, and I've raised these before, about creating a system where you put one brush across all 19,000 teams, all 1,100 schools, all 500,000 athletes, and say they should all be employees. Because I do believe in your state and in the state of every single person on this committee, literally thousands of your interscholastic athletic programs will go away, because it completely changes everything about what it means to be a student athlete.
For many years now, college athletics has generated enormous revenues. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. The Supreme Court comes along in the Alston case, is that right? In 2021, and changes where that money's going. Before, that money was going to TV stations and universities and coaches and others, I guess, construction companies that were building the new stadiums. And then after the Supreme Court decides the Alston case in 2021, the kids start getting paid. And all hell breaks loose. I mean, is that what is going on here? The fact that the money is being redistributed, and that's going to cause the world to spin off its axis because the kids are getting a share of the dough? Governor?
What I would say, Senator, in response to the Alston decision is there is flexibility for schools that can afford to make Alston payments to do so, and they can make Alston payments in particular sports, as long as they manage to satisfy the Title IX requirements, and they can choose what level they want to support, and they can also choose to play or not.
But you're getting down into the weeds, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We're going to
Okay.
have to get in the weeds. But that's what before the Alston case, everything was just fine. And then the Alston case is handed down, and the kids start getting some of the money, not the adults. The adults have got a share. And all of a sudden, the world's on fire. What am I missing here?
For the record, I support the Alston stuff. I also support NIL. I just would like to see a little more transparency and support for information to make it easier for student athletes to succeed in this space.
Well, let me make this suggestion to you, and I want to hear from the rest of the panel. I would strongly encourage you and your colleagues to try to get together and come up with a new system for us to consider that looks like somebody designed it on purpose. You may regret asking Congress to intervene here. All of a sudden, you're going to be micromanaged. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't, and my colleagues have raised excellent points, and it sounds to me like we do have a bit of a I don't know, wild, wild west, as Chairman Blumenthal described it. But I'd be real careful before you invite Congress in, start micromanaging your business. Isn't this fight over the fact that the kids are now getting some of the money that the adults were getting before? Yes, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. The injustice that has been inflicted on college athletes seemed to be fine for the industry until we won some court rulings and state legislatures started passing laws. Essentially, the industry had a monopoly on college athletes' NIL value. They owned every penny. Nike wants to slap a logo on a kid, got to pay the school. Kid can't get a penny. That's what this is about. Many of the schools even said, hey, if that happens, we're going to lose money. Well, that means you've been stealing money from these kids. If it's against, like, the Supreme Court, if it violates antitrust law, that's the problem. You know, the opposition, even employment stats, all this is about, we don't want to pay them fairly. You know, NIL, just so you know, this is not equitable economic situation here. That's like saying, go get another job because we're not going to pay you for what you do here. You know, we're going to cap you. Have a national price fix for a scholarship, no matter, and a lot of these schools, I don't know if that's me or
That's
not.
the NFL, man.
Is it? So, and we can't treat every division as if it's the same. FBS schools masquerading as D3 schools, saying there are no employees here. You know, and Notre Dame, I know I would imagine they have students in the bookstore as employees. It doesn't seem to harm their educational opportunity. There's no congressional hearings about that. We're talking about equal rights. And this industry is operating in an illegal fashion. It's breaking antitrust law, breaking labor laws, and now it's coming home. And players are getting, you know, avenues and levers and pulling leverage, and here we are saying the sky's going to fall, but it's not the truth.
I agree with you. I don't mean to go over so much, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to know, first, have you apologized to those female athletes and any others similarly situated for the trauma that was inflicted on them as a result of those decisions by NCAA?
Again, Senator, I'm not going to speak to or defend what happened in '22.
That's not my question. I'm asking whether you've
I
apologized.
understand that. I don't know. I'm assuming you're asking, we say you mean the NCAA.
Yes.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
So if Congress does nothing, where does this thing go, Mr. Swarbrick?
Well, I think we'll wind up with a series of rulings that declare students as employees subject to the FLSA rules or other rules and regulations. But it won't happen uniformly. It'll happen serially and create an unsustainable difference from state to state. We'll have a patchwork of state legislation that will also create differences which are unsustainable. That, for me, are the things that are most important.
Who's the highest paid NIL person in college football?
Well, again, a lot of that is some urban legend.
Well, I'm not asking about urban legend.
Well-
You're in this business, you should know. Tell me.
Well, again, probably the highest grossing is a gymnast, actually, Olivia Dunn from
Okay.
LSU.
How much does she make?
Again, she's making into the seven figures. I don't know the exact figure, but she's well into the seven figures in her endorsements.
I agree what's been said. I think where we're going to end up is we're going to be having a system that's been dictated by myriad state laws, by the results of litigation, and by the results of employment action is completely unmanaged change. I think the results are unpredictable, and I think
Let me give you my concern. Between the portal and the poaching of players, I think you're going to have chaos. I mean, you got the University of Utah offering everybody who will play a truck. So we're headed down the road here of a bidding war. Do you agree with that, Tony?
I do. I think our coaches would echo the same sentiment across multiple sports in terms of just the money entering the system. It's called NIL, but it's not really NIL. So when we say that collectives are responsible for the overwhelming amount of money in the system, that money is not really true NIL deals right now.
If you made people employees, Governor Baker, what would happen to Division II schools?
I think it's pretty clear that Division II and Division III schools would get out of the interscholastic collegiate sports business and
Can I
probably
just
turn most
listen
of
to
their
what he
stuff into
said?
club sports.